welcome everybody to the Sweet Keys to the Geekdom. This is our first episode in the new year, and it's the two of us as usual, myself, Brooke Fan, and our friend Aggrobacon, or Tim TK.
Hello.
Yes. Today we are talking about more serious topic than normal with us, and I asked him to join us because he is a massive X-Men fan, as most of us know. And I was reading this book, the graphic novel, on my way back to the island a couple of weeks ago, and it made a massive impression on me. So I showed it to Tim, and we both agreed we should do an episode on it this week in honor of Holocaust Remembrance Day, a couple of days ago. So, Tim, do you want to maybe just share a tiny bit just for people that if this is your first episode to the show? Well, that is going to be an interesting first episode. But I just tweet out the show, since you're now live, to share a tiny bit of yourself and even your little first impressions of the graphic novel.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Like Brookfan said, my name is Tim TK. I am a comic writer and editor with Silverline Comics, and I have a comic coming out in March called Wolf Hunter, which is about uh, the special operations executive in World War II. Um, yeah, and I've been reading X-Men comics since I was a wee lad, so it's my favorite thing in comics and the superhero genre and broad. Um, and Magneto has always been one of my favorite characters. Just because of how compelling he is, but also how deep Claremont made his backstory and his motivations. Um, and I feel like actually being able to explore more of that backstory and seeing, not just like the narrative side, but the very personal side of it, because it felt like a very personal story. So seeing a very personal story about Magneto felt really uh, impactful, and I really liked um the way this was done and my read through of it.
Yeah, it's your first time reading it, correct?
Yes,
Did you know about the story before I recommended it to you?
I had heard of it, but I had not actually found it or was able to pick it up. So this is the first time I actually was able to go through and read it or any of it.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said about it. With my first impressions, um, you know, the personal nature of Magneto in Germany, rise of the Nazi Party, and then to the point of in the camps and into the war and escaping, really impactful on me. I also just found the book. Um, this is a little uncomfortable to say, but very pretty in a very twisted
Yeah.
way. Where the images you saw were, of course, very disturbing and did not make you feel good in any way,
Mhm.
but just the art style was this weird mixture of during the somber, um, I would say happy moments, but before things really went downhill.
Mhm.
Um, there was a joy in images, in a sense,
Yeah.
and the art also easily translated to this horrific nightmare that was thrust upon, the character, the family, and just
Hmm.
the Jewish nation as a whole,
Yeah.
you know, in that time period. So, um, but no, I had a book for a while. Ashamed to say I did not read it till recently. It was one of the things in my backlog, and I wish I read it much earlier.
Mhm.
But it was just the right time, I think. You know,
Yeah.
how do you feel it depicts the history of kind of the event and how Magneto's, where we start off with him to, the journey because it's different than other interpretations of him,
Yeah.
through the war, from what
Yeah.
I understand at least.
I think the only other time we may have saw something of him was they well it, I think we saw a little bit of him in Auschwitz Birkenau in Claremont, but not too much because I think Claremont just wanted to establish that and him being a member of the Sonderkommando because that was just a very traumatic experience. But and then in the X-Men movie, we saw Magneto also at the gates to Auschwitz, and he had actually developed his mutant power at that point, and so
Yeah.
took some liberty on that one, where to show that he actually developed his power and was able to bend the gates, and that's why the camp administration uh, spared him essentially. But uh, with how this book handles the history of it all and Magneto's history, I felt like it was a very I liked that there weren't any mutant powers in this. Um,
Mm-hmm.
uh, yeah, I mean, that was one of Stanley's whole things. Is the reason why he liked the X-Men and why he liked Spider-Man is he wanted to have superheroes that dealt with personal problems. And so, um, if we're to do like a broad overview of the Holocaust and where Magneto fits into it, it's one of those things that's so alien. Um, when you think about it, just the sheer numbers involved, like it's hard to picture the sheer scale of everything, but keeping it focused just on Magneto as Max Eisenhart and his story going through that, and each decision that he has to make to survive. I felt that served the story very well, and also it made it much more um, easier to grasp. Not just the his transformation that he experienced going through it, but also the gravity of the situation that it have on an individual person.
I fully agree. And we kind of delved right into the topic. So I just really share about kind of my relationship with this is, you know, this one reason is so impactful besides just the natural horror of the event, of course, is um, I have family that you know that experienced
Yeah.
sadly these places, and some lived through the event, and many unfortunately did not.
Hmm.
Um, by part of my family's backstory is Hungarian Jews, so
Yeah.
the Auschwitz, some went to there, some went to
Hmm.
others, some were rescued by the Russians, some were rescued. I think, yeah, some were rescued by the Russians. I think a few escaped.
Yeah.
But eventually all ended up in America.
Hmm.
So, when I was reading this direct, I stop, of course, thinking about them.
Yeah.
Their
Yeah.
deaths even just behind the direction here. So, to my right, and behind the door over there is a painting of a little girl, I think Lily Kay, and another family member, and neither survived.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a little horrifying opening my
Mm.
door and seeing that image.
Yeah.
Each time I walk out because I think of that, of course.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
but there was one small part of the book that did felt like a little faint for a second. I thought, are we going to see powers here?
I think what we're talking about.
And that is when the family was lined up.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I'm very happy we did not see the mutant abilities.
Hmm.
And instead we saw Eric's father just,
Yeah.
shielded him
Hmm.
and threw him into a ditch to make sure he would not, to make sure he would live,
Yeah.
which was very powerful.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
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 And for me, movie wise, the one time I think of really Magneto in a camp is kind of first class
Hmm.
because at least from my recollection, we had a little more depth in that
Yeah.
because the first X-Men films showed it, but they were very small snippets. They
Yeah.
were very dark, very small, not really much detail.
Hmm.
The darkness, communicated the grim nature of it,
Yeah.
but not as much. Not it didn't communicate clearly what was going on because if you know about the event, it's obvious what was
Hmm.
but it's been so many years since I've seen that scene. It's hard for me to remember exactly the details, but I think there's still a difference with that compared to what we got for class where we literally had like multiple minutes long scenes, in a camp talking to a Nazi,
Yeah.
much clearer context
Hmm.
with the script. But
Yeah.
um, yeah,
And also in the movies, he goes by Eric Lyncher, which was actually in the comics his older brother's name. In the comics, he's still Max Eisenhart. But I think he does pick up. You think he starts going by Eric after he finds out that his brother died?
how do you? What do you think of the story conveying historical events for little snippets? I really appreciated that.
Yeah. I feel like it's incredibly important to understand the history around everything of what happened, and just for the point of context, and doing it in those small snippets allows you to get that context without taking away from Max. So just when it explains the German invasion of Poland and Eisengruppen that would follow the main army in and would actually do the dirty work. I feel like having that explained was very um, important understanding the situation at hand, and then they also visually demonstrated then by the Eisengruppen executing the other family that was hiding in the same field.
Yeah. For me, that is a great example. For me, the one I think of it's even, and like it was not new information for me because I learned about this growing up.
Hmm.
I kind of said before, I went to Jewish private school for a while,
Hmm.
both elementary and high school.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot about the Holocaust, but
Mm.
I still appreciated seeing, for Crystal Knock, it
Yeah.
kind of just it didn't feel like Eric was communicating this. It was the writer, you
Yeah.
know, himself communicating. This is the
Yeah.
event. This is what happened. This is what it means.
Hmm.
You know, it's
Yeah.
short snippets, sure, but with the visual, very powerful snippets that clearly conveyed the message of this is what happened.
Yeah.
And there's a good paragraph at the end of the first issue and a good paragraph at the end of the fifth issue with them talking about how much they tried to be historically accurate and how much hard research was put in
Yeah.
to have as little errors as possible,
Hmm.
which I greatly respect.
Yeah. Especially when you're doing something that's that recent and also that, still personally impactful for people living today.
Of course.
Treating that kind of respect, so there's no point of, a possible confusion or something, or getting something wrong when that was part of someone's experience. I feel like that goes a great deal. Um, yeah.
I agree completely. And but like also, I want to say we have a lot of people still, that live through those horrible tragedies, but also a lot are gone as well.
Yeah.
So having
Mhm.
um, the younger generations that not that might not know as much about it. There's a lot of ignorance in the
Yeah.
world
Mhm.
about what happened or how it happened or
Yeah.
a sorts of number of details, and learning about it through even something like a graphic novel or a comic um, can be incredibly beneficial
Yeah.
to a person.
Yeah.
You know,
And yeah, it provides some uh good a good perspective on it, for we're talking about this in the pre-show, but I have at this point my family is very loose on if they consider themselves Jewish or not, but we have ancestry there, but my family left before World War One. Um so I may have had some, very distant relatives over there at the time, but for the most part we're already in Canada by I think yes, because my great grandfather served in the Canadian Mounted Infantry and then the American Mounted Infantry in World War One.
you know,
um, but uh, so we didn't. Like with other families that like have had stories that they can pull on that personal experience and pass it on to younger generations for people who may like have some understanding of what had happened or what your relationship is to it. To actually have you know writers who pulled from their relatives or talked to people and pulled from their experience. I feel like that is a tremendously powerful perspective to try and experience.
with that topic and our book we both were talking about earlier, right?
Hmm.
And I want to make sure I have the name correct. I put it up on my phone. Is the book graphic novel, which is really just you know combination of multiple comic strips from the 50s to the 90s.
Yeah,
But uh, that the actual graphic novel that has all of them, it called We Spoke Out: Comic Books
yes,
and the Holocaust.
yeah,
Since a lot of writers and artists were Jews
hmm,
in the golden age of comics,
yeah,
they and because it was not as openly talked about in that era, especially the U.S., a lot of these artists took from their own experiences or their experience of their fathers or mothers or
yeah,
people they knew. Since majority were immigrant families, and
yeah,
put these stories into these comics for teenagers, for young adults, for the young people in the U.S. in those eras.
hmm,
And I was reading some of it last night, and it's horrific.
yeah,
I did it before the comic code was in place, really. Some
hmm,
of these, so just the level of violence and
yeah,
um, serious manner of stories, you know, I hope that it educated some people, in that era on what actually happened.
yeah,
Because while it was, horrific to read, it was nowhere near, inaccurate. It was
yeah,
all accurate. It was factual. It was, yeah. So
yeah. Hmm.
I think throughout all of this, nothing I've read, because I read other comics in regard to the topic to help, prep. None of it I read made me feel good
Yeah.
at all, but it's not supposed to,
No.
obviously. But so, something else you recommended to me was a great book called, based on a novel and a true story, um, called "We Only Kill Each Other,"
Yes.
which I'm looking forward to seeing the last two chapters of that in February and March.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And that, well, minus the mafia experience, but that's
yeah,
more closely to my family's experience was just seeing sort of the weird influx of anti-Semitism and how it influenced structures in America and Canada. Because even I think not people realize that, like in the 1930s, before the war popped off, there's a lot of people who in the West who were very enthralled with Hitler's speeches and were very much trying to make that a mainstay political party.
I, that just makes me sad.
Yeah.
That, but we still have it. You still see Nazi flags. We still have white supremacists. We still,
Yeah.
they're still around. So, not sure how successful that was, but just sad to still see it
Hmm.
some way.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think of the book also depicting, not just, did it just depict Jews? I
Yeah.
saw the LGBT
Uh,
community represented in it a little bit. I saw,
yeah.
you know, not just the Jews that are prosecuted by, the
Yeah.
Nazis, and the SS,
Mhm.
but
I think,
other groups as well.
yeah, I think with Max's girlfriend Magda being a Roma gypsy, gypsy is no longer I'll use term, but it was the
Yeah.
term used to refer to the Romani and the other group. I forgot their name in as a whole, but
Mm.
uh, I believe that in that area should have been Romani, the Roma. Um, uh, I think also showing that this the differences in the way that camps were handled and just the fact that it was is literally anyone who was not, you know, a traditional German definition of an Aryan, even though it's a made up race that doesn't exist, suffered under that regime. I think that also helped with the context of bot, and also um, it did a thing to it did make it feel more real. You get more. It wasn't just like two binary groups and a thing. You saw multiple groups all dealing with this thing, and it, yeah, I think the inclusion there was well done. Um,
Agreed. And for example, I would read a book. I remembered when I was reading it from what I read it before, but I just reread it too. But one man had a pink triangle on him.
mhm,
So,
yeah,
as a gay man. So,
hmm, yeah,
I remember learning about that at school. I I never went to, trying to remember my class. No, not my class. There's a program we could sign up for that we could go and see,
mhm,
but um, I didn't at the time, and
yeah,
I think I want to one day,
hmm,
you know,
yeah,
on my own, just to
Yeah.
Um, what or what do you think about how the family reacted, like in the story?
Yeah.
Because from what I've learned, you know, it felt very real. It felt very,
Yeah.
the idea of, well, it's not going to get any worse.
Mhm.
You know, what else can
Yeah.
they do?
Yeah.
One that stayed with me, and again, what really impacted me the second time I read it was when they were being loaded on a train. It's just like complete strangers to the story. Just random people, or like they promised us, um, bread and warm blankets. You know,
Yeah.
good work, but they'll take care of us.
Yeah.
And let's say person two said they are going to kill us.
Yeah.
I know. I've heard what they're doing. They're going to go on this train. You will die.
Yeah.
It's like, and then person one's, why would that make any sense? That makes no sense. Person two, or the person one, that makes no sense. Why would they kill us? Person two, why have they been killing us for 3 years?
Yeah.
There was a Warsaw ghetto being loaded up.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
but you
Yeah.
still have this denial,
Mhm.
and especially early on, the late 30s, but even in early 40s in some capacity
Mhm.
by some people. How do you think the book reflected that?
I thought it yeah, it again, like, it being focused on Max and his family, I feel like it did a lot, to it showcase the different generational kind of mindsets going there, but also just the fact that it was such a intense extreme that no one could really, like there's no reason you should reasonably expect that someone is, like, literally planning on killing over 6 million people, but that yeah, that was the reality of it, but it's such it, um but the back and forth between, their father and Max's older brother, Eric, and the way it kinda evolved, I feel like a lot where, uh, Max's father served in the German army during World War One, and the Kaiser and then the Chancellor at the time had said that, any Jews that had served were considered to be full Germans, uh, and, then, through the power of demagoguery and, uh, just groupthink, Hitler turned that into, being able to blame the Jews for why they had lost the war and, why there was so much, strain on the economy. The but the father still holds on to that notion, saying, "No, I earned my citizenship, and I should still be a hero of the state, so I'm going to hold on to that." But Eric is kind of the age where he sees the writing on the walls, but he's trying to figure out the best way to navigate it because he does want to protect his younger brother Max, and kind of like, well, we have to find ways to break the rules, or we have to find ways to either get out ahead of time or do something to protect him. But um, eventually, that turns into um, uh, Eric staying and joining the Warsaw Resistance. At least that's what's implied.
Yeah,
Uh, and uh, Max's father and the rest of the family having to rely on other people to or get them from, you know, uh, hideout to hideout, going from their family house in Germany to the countryside of Poland, and then eventually to the Warsaw Ghetto, and then um, they're told that someone does have a way of getting them to a house that's in unoccupied territory, and it turns out to be a trap. But um, uh, it's uh, interesting showing that wanting to believe that something is like you helped make something, so it's not going to turn on you, or it's not going to betray you as much as it looks like it is, and uh, but I feel like they both have the rationale for both of their thinking. I thought was very well explained and it very reasonable.
And also a logical, very logical when we saw, both of them kind of having the opposite trait of thinking at times,
Yeah.
like during Crystal Knot, um, you know,
Mm.
Max's father saw,
Yeah.
uh, you know, fellow Jews being beaten on the street, and he wanted to jump in and intervene and help and
Yeah.
save them. And the older brother held his father back, saying, "Not the right time,"
Yeah.
you know, kind
Hmm.
of a bit of a flip of a coin between the two. I believe
Yeah.
the older brother even specifically quoted his father
Yeah.
from what he said to him earlier to keep the older brother from not doing something too reckless
Yeah.
that could put the family in danger. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and the fact that we also saw um, Magneto's family not just being sent to, camp. We saw them on a run. We
Mm.
saw them try to escape the ghetto. You
Yeah.
know, communicated, I think, also the efficiency, to how efficient the Nazis were.
Hmm.
Because, of course, people try to escape, people try to live, people try to,
Yeah.
not like they, just surrendered immediately and,
Hmm.
you know, and gave up. Obviously not. That'd be ridiculous to think.
Hmm.
But it communicated just, no matter what you tried, it was extremely difficult to, not end up, really ended up an end, sadly.
Yeah.
So, um, I'm trying to think, I thought you'd be doing a 2-hour episode, but I'm not. Um, how about we talk a little more about the book, and then we could kind of go to our other topics.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it might be under 2 hours, but
Yeah.
um, so we didn't really see much of the mother or the sister.
Hmm.
Mostly background. What about the teacher?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
uh, I thought this was very interesting to see how um they have that mentor figure that had kind of gotten as far as he could by playing around the rules as much as he could, both before things got really bad, and then again in the camps. And I think also it was interesting that they have him and show his relationship with the capo, and um, how the plan also having the capo, because uh, in the American schooling system, which is I think is very interesting, is they talk about the capo essentially as being people who had just flat out betrayed their fellow Jews to get a better posting in the camp when uh according to like historical accounts, it's much more accurate like how it's presented in the book, where it's these people find a position where they have to do some bad things, but they can do more good for their fellow prisoners by being in a position to offer up bribes or pull reports and do things to get Max on a different posting or to smuggle in supplies and food. And then like in the spring uprising where they um it was the capos and the registrars who had essentially found a way to get guns and ammunition inside the camp so they could and I think it something like 200 of them died in the camp, another 250 of them died outside the camp, and it was all the capos um and commandos who had essentially picked up the guns who had allowed the other 200 or so Jewish prisoners to escape. Um, they're the ones who had died in the uprising. So I think uh, having Caleb's position and then also having Caleb introduce the capo and establish that relationship and kind of be the mentor that Max needs in the moment to grow up and find how he's going to make a difference in that situation. I felt that was very like a great character to have in there, even if he didn't have too much of an arc himself. But also, it showed the it's kind of the humanity that people had to experience in that situation where you understand that you're like in the worst place on earth, so you're going to help this kid kind of no matter what. And Caleb eventually ends up dying for it.
I see that. Well said, my friend. And let's go to kind of the fact that at the end of the story, there is a mini comic. That's a bonus story. Very very powerful, but I want to talk about. But before we move on to that, I'll just let's finish with Magneto scene. Do you recommend this book to people?
Oh yes, 100%.
Same here.
Yeah,
Yeah, as
it's definitely not like light before bed reading, but it is it's an important comic, and I feel like
be read.
yeah.
It's something that might not be the most pleasurable thing to read.
Hmm.
It won't be pleasurable at all to read, but
Yeah.
it should be read.
Yes.
If you are a comic fan, you should get to either buy this book or at least read this book one time through
Mhm.
some means.
Yeah.
I think we both agree on that. And yeah, let's go to this part. What do you think of that bonus comic then?
I thought that was in uh it's a story that I've never heard before, so I think hearing about Dinah's experience was uh it, that in itself was moving and disturbing in its own right, and just understanding the trauma she must have gone through. But then also, what was touching was seeing the outreach from the other members of the comics and the animation community. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that is very touching. They, even in the we must speak out. We spoke out. We spoke out. They reference that. I was reading excerpts.
Hmm.
I read intros, right?
Yeah.
To the graphic novel of that for introduction, speak about the unspeakable, the Holocaust, the comic books, comics with conscience, and they reference her fight for her creative, for her own beings, for the right to her own arts she made under, you know, extreme distress. There's
Yeah.
no way anyone can argue that it's a,
Hmm.
um, consensual working relationship by any means.
Yeah.
But uh, the story also I didn't know about it either. it's
Mhm.
extremely moving to me.
Yeah.
I've Dr. Mengele was a very sick and twisted and evil man, and there's actually very few people in the world I would ever describe as evil, and he is
Yeah.
possibly very high or the top of possibly the top of my list, but for an incredibly evil man.
Yeah.
And hearing the uh, about how she made paintings and
Mhm.
hopefully bought a little more time for some people
Yeah.
and hopefully even saved a few lives there
Mhm.
was a tragically beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And she deserves to have her artwork, of course.
Yeah.
They did ridiculous that they won't give it to her,
Mhm.
especially if they have, spare copies,
Yeah.
recreations of the art. Then,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's the reason we recommend the book. I think is besides of the great Etchman story.
Mhm.
Um, you also have this great little story at the end
Yeah.
that tells a true story that is very important to read. I think.
Yes.
Um, yeah. So, but what um, what are but what do you think about? I think this is the last kind of big, you know, topic. Um, what do you think of what happened this, past week with,
But yeah.
you know what I'm talking about, Twitch traffic?
Yes. Yeah. With mouse being banned.
Yes.
Yeah. I, the uh the complaint of it containing nudity when it's a picture of a mouse is one kind of absurd to me, but also I think it's very interesting that the people who raised complaints did so on, the Holocaust Remembrance Day, essentially.
That is insulting, but
Yeah, yeah. Um, but I mean, it was something that I had read in high school, and I think, uh, uh yeah, it and Miles is probably also, it does the same thing like Testament does, where it's a personal story going through the Holocaust, so you get a much better sense of the context and the gravity of the situation, rather than just your teacher reciting just kind of blanket numbers and statistics. Um, I think yeah, I think it is a very important and poignant book that should be read like high school age is kind of ideal for it. And I mean, if you if you don't think your kids already learned about nudity or sex in high school, let me tell you about what they're doing.
that's the
uh,
truth.
yeah. No, but when it's such like even like it's a non-complaint that it feels very thinly veiled to me. Uh, but uh, that book is one that I would definitely recommend to anyone in high school or college that wants to like have a better grasp of uh what these people went through and what they experienced at the time and what their immediate family had to deal with because if you survived, that was trauma that you carried with you for the rest of your life. And Mouse goes through that and talks about what it was like growing up with a father who had survived the camps. uh
That is
and
that's a great point too.
yeah, and so I definitely think that it helps illustrate the generational effect that trauma can have, that it's not just the person who experiences it, but largely it's going to be stuff that's going to impact the family for the next couple generations, and economically and sociologically, that's something that people are going to be. We're still dealing with the after effects of all that, and I think yeah, the fact that if you're a member of the Jewish diaspora, you probably have family who are scattered all over the place now that you have no idea even exist.
100 points. Very well said. And what he said about, trauma from just surviving, of course, right?
Mm,
The first story I read from We Spoke Out was called Master Race.
mhm,
And it was about, a camp survivor seeing an Nazi on a
mhm,
same train with him in New York.
yeah,
And I don't really want to spoil the ending of the book, but it was very dark, of course, and delved into, his lasting trauma
yeah,
from always having to survive after such horrific events.
mhm,
And it was a very, very sad ending,
yeah,
to say. I really recommend We Spoke Out. It's I I've only got through a few little stories in it so far, but I'm gonna get through more. It's about 271 pages,
mm,
and yeah,
yeah,
I think if I were to order kind of hard recommendees of the stuff I've read so far, would be I said estimate book just because it's shorter and
mhm,
it's I would say a little easier to swallow
yeah,
because even the stuff I was reading so far was incredibly graphic
mhm,
and hard to digest.
yeah,
But then I would say we spoke out, and then I would say I think the mobster book. A little hard to say about the mobster one because about the Jewish mob really kill each other because I haven't read a whole story. I'm waiting for the last two issues, so
yeah,
it's hard to judge the story without you know knowing the whole story yet. But I'm not gonna order. I also found something else that's interesting when I was reading. We spoke out. In one of the intros about a 1998 Superman book. By
mm.
the way, do you know what I'm referring to, Tim? Possibly.
I've probably seen panels from it, but I don't know if I've.
Fair.
Yeah.
Where in '98 Superman had a three-issue arc, right?
Mhm.
Where he is back in the Golden Age, and the last issue of this arc, right? Like it's like 1930s, and
Oh.
he goes to Poland to liberate the Jews,
Mhm.
and the writer had to say Jews and the cap's name, and you know,
Mhm.
like all these historically accurate titles, and the editor said you must remove that, or the editor removed it to be more inclusive to everybody,
Wow.
so more people can relate to it. Um, I thought this was just to see it. I haven't read the whole story, but I kind of went through this page. I went through the slides, went through the pages, looked at the bed, right?
Mhm.
You know, you still have times where, or even back then, especially, you would have times where you would display, you would try to display, historical fact,
Mhm.
and it would be washed away.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah. But what about you, Tim? Is there anything that you would recommend in regards to? I'd say let's mostly stick with comics.
Yeah.
Um,
Um.
to the
Yeah.
latest books at our time.
Yeah. And I definitely do recommend Testament now. I also do recommend Mouse.
Yes.
My copy is actually it's on the is it up here? I think it's upstairs. But I actually have my copy of Mouse signed by its author.
That's amazing.
I met him down in Florida, and yeah, um, super cool dude. Very uh, he's actually pretty funny. Uh, but yeah. Um, I was let's see. Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like we already mentioned these names, but also I do feel like after Recommend, we only kill each other now. One, it's a Comixology original, so if you have uh
Unlimited.
yeah, if you have unlimited, you get it to read for free. Um, Art Spiegelman is his name. He signed my book, my copy. Um, but and just seeing how just at the grips of time, like, there's still elements in America who were, saying that, this fascism thing may be all right in the 1930s. And I think, seeing, um, stuff taken from, again, we mentioned it's based on a true story. So seeing
Yeah.
just kind of the story that came out of America at that same time. I feel like is incredibly potent and definitely something to keep in mind, kind of at all times.
I will also recommend the novel then. The novel
Hmm.
is
Yeah,
19 Jennings from 1992. Um, I've not read a novel. I don't have you read the novel, Tim?
I've not.
So,
Yeah.
but I want to,
Hmm.
especially after reading the comic. Um, I just think about our shows growing up, or just, say the two of the most famous movies that tackle a topic is, Schindler's List.
Yeah, good movie.
Schindler's great movie.
Uh, it's you will cry watching this movie about the boy in the striped pajamas.
Yeah, of course.
And I think that's also a good movie when it looks at the humanity behind the situation, like the one of the kids that follows is the child of a SS officer who watches the camp. But for them, they don't care about the 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 war goal to get more living space, or the purification of the German race. They just they have a friend, and they wonder why they have strange pajamas. And then
Yeah.
yeah, I think just understand the kind of like the humanity of it, and is very it's one of the best points of that movie.
Oh, great. I know I recall, remember seeing that movie.
Yeah.
It's a powerful one. My second one I always think of though is The Pianist.
Yeah.
Also a great film. When it comes to animation or TV shows, funny enough, I remember, I'm not sure many people recommend what is matching me mentioning this, but Regrets.
Huh.
That's on a Holocaust, but it's more just about Jewish culture
Yeah.
and people.
Yeah.
Like it was the first things from the early 2000s or late 90s
Yeah.
where they actually focused on Jewish holiday episodes.
Yeah.
So the creator was Jewish and really wanted to do that.
Hmm.
So I think they had a Hanukkah one, they had a Passover one.
Yeah.
I can't, I know they thought about a Holocaust because that would be a little too heavy for that age group.
Hmm.
But, they, yeah, just different shows or whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, One actually, I do remember that did talk a little bit, or did have something related to the Holocaust, right?
Hmm.
Um, do you remember the show? I want to make sure how this. after back and forth. I don't remember which one it was. I think it was. You know, after that, I'm going to get this wrong. So I'm going to look this up for a sec. Uh, it's been so long since I've seen this show, right? Alright, so it was X-Men Evolution. That was it.
Yeah.
Um, well, it could be P. Now they could be slightly. Nope. Yeah, I was correct. I was right. Because it literally says Auschwitz.
Mhm.
Do you remember watching X-Men Evolution, Tim, or did you ever see that?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you remember the episode where Captain America and Logan rescued people from Auschwitz?
I'm trying to remember, but I think I'm blanking on it. I mean, it's been a while.
Yeah, of course. But that is, I really think like that is one show that I remember as they did, you
Mhm.
know, to like kids. So
Yeah.
this is an event in a war because like the label kind of as POWs, and I think really drew they hit a lot of the goriness
Yeah.
interest because it is so obviously.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
um, and of course, like with the 50s, there's a lot more restrictions to
Yeah.
what you're allowed to put to kiss media.
Hmm.
Um, like we those images, I read it. We spoke out. Would never be allowed in comics today.
Hmm.
If you, I think, like for example, if you went to someone you described what you want to draw, you might be kicked out of the office.
Yeah.
I'm assuming. So
Yeah.
yeah, but
If you, yeah.
go ahead.
Uh. Uh. See. Uh. I believe they said there's a one thing I remember. There's a BBC um series on Auschwitz. I believe it's on Netflix right now,
Oh,
and that was one of the plans we watched in school, and yeah, it's very good, but yeah, it gets a hard watch.
of course, but I can't think of anything else really.
Say if you want, yeah. After all this talk, if you want a feel good at the end of all this, it has some rough. There are some moments where there are characters who die, but
Yeah.
the show Hunters on Amazon Prime, which is about a Jewish kid in New York and a group of Jewish Holocaust survivors and like their relatives who hunt down Nazis who have survived. Uh,
I like that.
yeah,
Um,
it's
I want to watch this now.
yeah. It's very violent, but it's very fun.
Cool. I want to watch this now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Normally we do our segments on like what else we've been doing, but I don't really feel we should do that today.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel appropriate.
Hmm.
So we'll go back to normal routine next week. Um, so we will. I will think I'm gonna put kind of a message out on social media on what to plan for next week because our debating going back and forth on if I should mention what your plans are, what not.
Hmm.
But and a few other things not related to our topic today, but I don't feel it's appropriate. So keep an eye out to Twitter. Um, I'll try to remember to do it also on Discord,
Yeah.
and you'll see what the upcoming plans are.
Mhm.
But on that note, I think we're going to end it. This
Sure.
actually ran shorter than we imagined, I think. Also, Tim, you might be frozen.
Oh, I am.
Nope.
Okay, that's weird.
And now you're loading forever.
Perfect.
Okay, so on that note, folks, Tim went to a black hole, and we're going to end. I thank you for joining us on this part discuss topic. You really recommend the books. I am going to link a couple of the books you mentioned to the description later, as well as, of course, where you can find Tim as usual. And we will be back next week.
Yep.
Have a good rest of the weekend, everyone, or just night of the weekend, and good week. Bye. Black Hole Tim, you want to say bye to the viewers?
Goodbye, everybody.
That works. Okie dokie.